Man United boss Ruben Amorim's decision to change formation in Wolves' draw baffles Gary Neville. Man United missed out on a chance to go fourth as they became the first side to drop points against Wolves since the start of October after a run of 12 defeats for the winless side. And Gary Neville says the blame for the performance falls squarely at the feet of Ruben Amorim. Gary Neville says Manchester United went backwards in the 1-1 draw against winless Wolves because of Ruben Amorim's decision to revert to a back-3. United missed out on the chance to go fourth and became the first side to drop points to Wolves since October after a run of 12 consecutive defeats as Amorim's side were booed off by their own fans at Old Trafford. That was the baddest of the bad that, the Sky Sports pundit said on the Gary Neville podcast. They weren't just booed off at full time. The fans waited in the stadium to continue to boo them. United were flat from the off, but led through Joshua Zirkzee's deflected strike before Wolves scored a deserved equalizer just before halftime through Ladislav Krejci's header. Neville was surprised Amorim had not stuck with the back for that earned a big win over Newcastle at Old Trafford on Boxing Day, given his only change was Zirkzee for the injured Mason Mount. They've gone backwards, the Sky Sports pundit said on co-commentary after the equalizer. I'm not quite sure why they have changed. Wolves have probably been the better team. Just 20 minutes into the game, he had said, "This isn't right. I've watched enough of United over the last 5 or 6 weeks to know what looks right and what isn't right." Neville was no more impressed by United's performance as the game wore on, with Wolves coming close to claiming their first win of the season only to be denied by 2 crucial Sen-Lammens saves. That ManUtd pundit felt Amorim's choice of formation was to blame for the drop-off and questioned his comments in a press conference when the head coach said he could not tweak the system because of media pressure. He doesn't need to say, "I haven't changed because of the media," because then he's telling us basically that the media is in his head, Neville said on his Sky Sports podcast. The reason he's had to change is because the performance levels with the 3-4-3 have been so poor and the results have been appalling. When I see that we go back to 3 at the back after 5 minutes tonight, and I'm thinking, no, Ruben, why have you done that? Neville added. The manager has to look at that and think I got that wrong. I complicated it. Amorim subs made Man United worse. Neville was once again critical of Amorim's substitutions after he decided to take off Zirkzee at halftime despite having a bench with 5 teenagers on it. Amorim explained after the game that it was a tactical decision to remove Zirkzee rather than due to an injury. They made Manchester United worse, Neville said of the changes. Every single substitution was bizarre. If Zirkzee wasn't injured and that was a tactical substitution, it was a really poor one. Zirkzee isn't Eric Cantona by any stretch of the imagination, but he needed to be out there for physicality, for presence, for experience. And he'd scored. You couldn't take him off. So I'm hoping he's injured. I'm hoping he's injured for Ruben Amorim. Manchester United's future, youth development, tactical decisions, and Rashford's Barcelona crossroads. The intersection of past, present, and future. Manchester United has always existed at the confluence of multiple timelines. The club's glorious past casts long shadows over present ambitions, while decisions made today ripple forward into an uncertain future. Rarely have these temporal dimensions been more dramatically intertwined than in the current moment, where youth development prospects, tactical selection dilemmas, and the potential departure of an established star all demand simultaneous attention and careful navigation. Each storyline carries its own weight, its own implications, and its own emotional resonance for a fan base that has learned to hope cautiously after years of disappointment. The essence of Manchester United's identity has always been rooted in youth development. From the Busby Babes to the class of '92, the club's greatest eras have featured homegrown talents stepping on Old Trafford's hallowed turf and writing their names into football folklore. Today, as Ruben Amorim establishes his vision for the club's future, questions about which young players deserve opportunities, how international careers might shape their trajectories, and whether the academy can still produce genuine first-team contributors all take on renewed urgency. The decision by rising star Aiden Heaven regarding his international future represents one data point in this larger conversation about United's youth development pipeline and its ability to nurture the next generation of talent. Simultaneously, on-field realities demand immediate attention. When established players like Joshua Zirkzee struggle to meet expectations, managers face difficult decisions about whether patience or ruthlessness better serves the team's interests. The calls for Amorim to give a lethal wonder kid their debut against Wolves reflects supporters' perpetual hunger for that magical moment when a young talent announces themselves on the big stage. These moments have defined Manchester United across generations, and the possibility that another such breakthrough might be imminent generates excitement that transcends normal tactical discussions. Yet perhaps the most emotionally charged storyline involves Marcus Rashford, the boy from Wythenshawe who became a Manchester United icon before his 25th birthday. The reports that Barcelona members have voted to pursue his permanent signing after a potential loan spell represent a potential turning point not just in one player's career, but in Manchester United's modern identity. Rashford embodies the club's youth development ethos, having progressed through the academy to become a full England international and club talisman. His potential departure to Barcelona would force difficult questions about whether United can still retain their best homegrown talents, whether their current project genuinely offers the ambition elite players demand, and what such a loss would mean for the club's soul. Welcome, understanding the broader context. Welcome to this comprehensive exploration of three interconnected narratives that illuminate Manchester United's current reality and future direction. These stories may initially appear distinct: a youth player's international decision, a tactical selection dilemma, and a potential transfer of an established star. But they are unified by deeper themes about identity, ambition, and the perpetual challenge of honoring tradition while embracing necessary change. For Manchester United supporters, few topics generate more passion than youth development. The club's history has conditioned fans to believe that the next academy graduate might be special, that homegrown players understand the club's values in ways that expensive imports never quite grasp, and that giving youth opportunities represents not just good business but moral imperative. When reports emerge about promising teenagers making decisions that will shape their careers, or about wonder kids potentially earning debuts, it taps into this deeply held belief system that youth development is central to what Manchester United means. The tactical dimensions of team selection add another layer of complexity. Ruben Amorim arrived at Old Trafford with a clear philosophy and proven track record, but implementing that vision requires making difficult choices about which players fit his system and which don't. When expensive signings struggle, the pressure to persist with them conflicts with the meritocratic principles that good management demands. Should Zirkzee receive continued opportunities to find his form? Or does Amorim need to demonstrate that no player, regardless of their transfer fee, is guaranteed a place? These decisions shape not just individual matches, but the culture Amorim is trying to establish. The Marcus Rashford situation operates on yet another plane, involving questions of loyalty, ambition, and whether Manchester United can still compete with Europe's absolute elite for the services of their best players. Rashford's potential move to Barcelona would be analyzed through countless lenses: tactical fit, financial implications, career trajectory, legacy considerations, and what it signals about both clubs' current standing in football's hierarchy. For United, losing a homegrown superstar to a European rival would sting in ways that differ qualitatively from selling a player acquired from elsewhere. This analysis will examine each storyline in depth, exploring not just the surface facts, but the deeper implications, historical context, and future ramifications. We'll consider Aiden Heaven's international decision as a case study in modern youth player career management, dissect the arguments for and against giving a wonder kid their debut, and thoroughly analyze Rashford's Barcelona situation from multiple perspectives. By the conclusion, you'll have a comprehensive understanding of how these distinct narratives weave together to illustrate Manchester United's current challenges and opportunities. Aiden Heaven's international decision: navigating modern football's identity politics. Understanding the modern international landscape. The decision facing Aiden Heaven regarding his international future reflects the increasingly complex calculus that young players with multiple eligibility options must navigate in modern football. Gone are the days when international representation was a straightforward question of birthplace or heritage. Today's young talents often possess eligibility for multiple national teams through various combinations of birth location, parental heritage, and residency requirements. The choices they make can profoundly impact their careers, shaping everything from playing time opportunities to commercial value and eventual legacy. For a rising Manchester United prospect like Heaven, the international decision carries additional weight because of how it intersects with his club development. Representing a nation with established stars in his position might mean limited playing time during international windows, potentially slowing his development during crucial formative years. Conversely, choosing a nation where he'd be a regular starter could provide the consistent international experience that accelerates maturity and tactical sophistication. Yet there are also emotional and identity dimensions that transcend pure career calculation. Questions of personal heritage, family pride, and authentic connection to a nation's culture and people. The timing of Heaven's decision is particularly significant. International commitments become binding once a player represents a nation in competitive fixtures beyond youth level. Making this choice too early can foreclose options that might become preferable later in a career, while waiting too long risks missing formative international experiences that could boost development. The young defender must weigh immediate opportunities against long-term potential, personal identity against career optimization, and loyalty to heritage against pragmatic ambition. Manchester United's perspective on international commitments. From Manchester United's standpoint, their young players' international commitments represent a double-edged sword. On one hand, international recognition validates the club's development work and raises players' profiles, potentially increasing their future value. A Manchester United defender earning caps for a prestigious national team brings reflected glory to the club's academy and attracts other talented youngsters who see evidence that the pathway to international football runs through Old Trafford. On the other hand, international duties create additional physical and mental demands on young players already navigating the challenges of breaking into a top-level club. Travel, particularly to distant continents, disrupts training routines and recovery cycles. The tactical demands of international football sometimes conflict with what players are learning at club level, potentially creating confusion or requiring mental compartmentalization. And there's always injury risk, the nightmare scenario where a player gets hurt on international duty and returns to their club diminished. Heaven's specific decision likely involves conversations with United's coaching staff, his family, possibly mentors who have navigated similar situations, and representatives who understand the commercial and career implications. The club's input would focus on ensuring Heaven makes an informed decision that he feels genuinely connected to, while also considering how different international commitments might impact his United career trajectory. There's no universal right answer. What matters is that the choice aligns with Heaven's authentic sense of identity while positioning him for optimal career development. The broader pattern in youth football. Heaven's situation reflects broader trends in how international football intersects with youth development in the modern game. We've seen numerous examples of players switching national teams, changing allegiances based on evolving personal identity or frustration with lack of opportunities, and strategically choosing nations that offer better pathways to major tournament participation. These decisions have become increasingly accepted as legitimate aspects of career management rather than questioned as somehow illegitimate or disloyal. The increased acceptance stems partly from recognition that identity is complex, especially for young people with genuinely multicultural backgrounds. A player born in England to parents from another nation, who perhaps spent formative years living in yet a third country, might legitimately feel connections to multiple places. Forcing such individuals into singular national identities seems increasingly anachronistic in a globalized world where fluid, hyphenated identities are common and unremarkable. For Manchester United's academy, producing players who face these international dilemmas is actually a sign of success. It means they are developing talents of sufficient quality that multiple nations want to claim them. The club's role is to provide guidance without pressure, ensuring that young players make decisions they can live with across their entire careers. Whatever Heaven decides regarding his international future, United's responsibility is to continue developing him into the best possible footballer, ensuring that he has the platform to honor whichever nation he chooses to represent. Long-term career implications. The international decision Heaven makes will reverberate across his entire career in ways both predictable and surprising. Representing a traditionally powerful nation might mean competing with established stars for playing time, but offers the prestige of major tournament participation and the technical and tactical education that comes from training with elite internationals. Choosing a smaller nation could provide guaranteed playing time and leadership opportunities, but might mean fewer high-profile matches and less international recognition. There are also commercial considerations that, while perhaps less central to a young player's thinking, do factor into modern football careers. Players who become regular internationals for prestigious nations command higher commercial value, attracting sponsorship opportunities and raising their profile in key markets. This increased commercial value then feeds back into their bargaining position during contract negotiations, creating a virtuous cycle where international success and club career trajectory reinforce each other. The decision's permanence also matters psychologically. Once Heaven commits to representing a nation in competitive senior football, that choice cannot easily be reversed. Living with that decision across a potentially 15-year international career requires certainty that the choice aligns with genuine personal identity rather than temporary career calculation. Many players who made pragmatic rather than authentic international choices have later expressed regret, feeling disconnected from the nation they represent despite the career benefits that decision provided. The Wonder Kid debate. Should Amorim fast-track youth over struggling signings? Analyzing Joshua Zirkzee's challenges. The harsh assessment that Joshua Zirkzee's performances represent howlers worthy of being dropped reflects the unforgiving environment that Manchester United players inhabit. The Dutch forward arrived with considerable expectations, having impressed in Serie A and earned recognition as one of Europe's promising young strikers. However, the transition to Premier League football under a new tactical system has proven challenging, with performances that have frustrated supporters and apparently called his position in the team into question. Understanding Zirkzee's struggles requires examining multiple factors beyond simple quality assessment. The Premier League's intensity, pace, and physical demands differ significantly from Italian football, requiring adaptation periods even for talented players. Amorim's tactical system makes specific demands of his forwards, movement patterns, pressing responsibilities, positional discipline, that might differ from what Zirkzee learned in previous environments. And there's the psychological dimension. Confidence affects performance, and struggling publicly at a club of United's magnitude can create negative spirals where mistakes breed anxiety, which produces more mistakes. The question facing Amorim is how long to persist with Zirkzee before making changes. Managerial philosophy differs on this point. Some believe that expensive signings must be given extended opportunities to find form, that the investment demands patience, and that quality eventually emerges with proper support. Others argue that meritocracy must be ruthlessly enforced, that no player's status protects them from being dropped if their performances don't meet required standards. Amorim's decision will send signals about what kind of culture he's building at Manchester United. The case for the Wonder Kid. The argument for giving a lethal Wonder Kid their debut against Wolves rests on several pillars. First, there's the meritocratic principle that the player performing best in training and reserve matches deserves opportunities regardless of age. If a young striker is genuinely outperforming Zirkzee in preparation, traditional football values suggest they should be rewarded with a chance to demonstrate those qualities in the first team. Second, there's the tactical argument that fresh legs and fearless confidence might provide what the team currently lacks. Young players unburdened by reputation or expectation sometimes play with freedom that more established professionals have lost. They haven't yet learned to be afraid of making mistakes, haven't been ground down by public criticism, and often possess the directness and instinctive quality that can unlock stubborn defenses. If Amorim believes this wonder kid possesses the technical tools to contribute, their psychological profile might make them even more valuable than someone theoretically superior who is currently drowning in negative confidence. Third, there's United's historical identity as a club that trusts youth. Supporters yearn for moments that echo Sir Alex Ferguson giving chances to Beckham, Scholes, Giggs, and others who repaid that faith by becoming legends. Every young player handed a debut carries the possibility of being the next great homegrown success story. This emotional and cultural dimension transcends pure tactical calculation, tapping into what many believe makes Manchester United special: the risks and counterarguments. However, rushing young players into high-pressure situations also carries significant risks. The Premier League is unforgiving, and defenders with years of experience will ruthlessly exploit any technical or physical limitations. A young striker thrust into a crucial match might suffer an experience that damages their confidence for months or years. Football history includes numerous cautionary tales of wonder kids given opportunities too early, struggling badly, and never recovering psychologically from that early exposure. There's also the question of whether this unnamed wonder kid is genuinely ready or whether calls for their inclusion represent supporters' frustration with current options rather than objective assessment of the youngster's capabilities. Fans naturally romanticize academy prospects, projecting hopes and dreams onto young players they've perhaps only seen in highlight videos or reserve matches. The reality of Premier League football often differs dramatically from youth team dominance. From Amorim's perspective, he possesses information that supporters lack. He observes these players daily in training, understands their tactical comprehension, knows their physical and psychological readiness, and can assess whether they're genuinely prepared for the step up. If he continues selecting Xerxes despite poor performances, it might reflect that the alternatives, including wonder kids, simply aren't ready yet regardless of how appealing their potential appears. Finding the right balance. The optimal approach likely involves nuanced thinking rather than absolute rules. Perhaps the wonder kid deserves a place on the bench, providing an option if the match situation allows introducing them in a lower pressure scenario. Maybe they should feature in cup competitions where the stakes are slightly lower, but the opposition is still meaningful. Gradual exposure, building confidence through manageable challenges before asking them to shoulder huge responsibility, represents smart player development. Amorim must also consider team dynamics. How would dropping an expensive summer signing after just months affect dressing room confidence in his decision-making? Would it create an atmosphere where players feel one bad run of form might see them exiled? Or would it demonstrate refreshing ruthlessness that raises standards across the squad? These cultural considerations matter as much as tactical ones when building a team capable of sustained success. The Wolves fixture itself also factors into the decision. Is this a match where United are expected to dominate possession, creating numerous chances that might suit a raw but instinctive finisher? Or will it be a tight, physical battle where experience and tactical maturity matter more than youthful exuberance? Amorim's tactical analysis of the specific opponent should inform whether this particular match represents an appropriate moment for a wonder kid debut. Historical context and precedent. Manchester United's history with young strikers provides both inspiration and cautionary tales for this decision. Marcus Rashford's emergency debut against Midtjylland, where he scored twice, represents the dream scenario. A youngster thrust into action through necessity who seizes the moment spectacularly. That breakthrough launched one of the most significant careers in recent United history and vindicated the club's faith in youth development. However, there are also examples of young strikers given opportunities before they were ready, struggling with the pressure and never quite recovering the confidence that early exposure damaged. The key differentiator often seems to be whether the opportunity came organically, when the player was genuinely prepared, versus being forced by external pressure or managerial desperation. Amorim's track record at Sporting Lisbon included successfully integrating young talents into his first team, suggesting he possesses good judgment about when players are ready. If he decides this wonder kid should debut against Wolves, supporters should trust that assessment based on his proven developmental credentials. Conversely, if he continues with more experienced options, that too deserves respect as the decision of someone with better information and understanding than those watching from outside. Marcus Rashford and Barcelona, a crossroads for player and club. Understanding the Barcelona referendum. The report that Barcelona members have voted to approve pursuing Marcus Rashford's permanent signing represents one of the most significant potential transfers in Manchester United's recent history. Barcelona's unique governance structure, where members vote on major decisions, means this isn't simply a club executive's whim, but reflects broader institutional will. For Rashford to have passed this democratic test indicates that Barcelona's membership believes he would significantly strengthen their squad and represents worthwhile investment. The structure of the potential deal, starting with a loan before a permanent transfer, reflects pragmatic thinking from both clubs' perspectives. For Barcelona, operating under well-documented financial constraints, a loan provides opportunity to assess Rashford's fit within their system and squad before committing to a permanent deal. For Manchester United, it creates a scenario where they might facilitate Rashford's departure without appearing to push out a homegrown hero, framing it instead as providing him an opportunity to experience a different challenge. However, the loan-to-permanent structure also creates complications. During the loan period, Rashford would be strengthening a European rival while United potentially lacks adequate replacement. If he excels at Barcelona, the permanent transfer becomes more expensive and psychologically harder for United to accept. If he struggles, United might end up welcoming back a player whose confidence has been further damaged and whose market value has declined. These dynamics make the loan approach risky for all parties despite its superficial appeal as a trial period. Rashford's perspective and motivations. From Marcus Rashford's viewpoint, a move to Barcelona represents multiple potential benefits. The chance to play for one of football's most storied clubs, to experience La Liga's different tactical and technical demands, and to work with Barcelona's coaching staff could reinvigorate a career that has stagnated somewhat at United. After spending his entire professional life at one club, exposure to different methods and philosophies might unlock aspects of his game that have remained underdeveloped. There's also the competitive ambition dimension. If Rashford believes Barcelona offers better chances of winning major trophies than Manchester United's current project, that calculation might override sentimental attachment to his boyhood club. Elite athletes are driven by the desire to win the sport's biggest prizes, and if Rashford has concluded that United's trajectory makes that impossible in the near term, seeking opportunities elsewhere represents legitimate professional ambition rather than disloyalty. The Barcelona move would also address some of the pressures that come with being Marcus Rashford at Manchester United. The intense scrutiny, the weight of expectation as a homegrown player representing his local club, the constant media attention to both football and off-field activities. All of this creates stress that might be affecting his performances. Starting fresh at a new club, where he'd be judged primarily on football performances rather than carrying symbolic weight as an academy graduate, might prove psychologically liberating. Manchester United's decision framework. For Manchester United, deciding whether to facilitate Rashford's departure involves agonizing calculations across multiple dimensions. The football question is whether his current form and future potential justify his place in the team and his substantial wages. If Amorim's assessment is that Rashford doesn't fit his tactical system or lacks the required work rate and discipline, retaining him represents expensive sentimentality rather than sound squad management. The financial dimension is also significant. Rashford's wages are substantial, and freeing that money from the wage bill creates room for other investments. A permanent transfer fee, even at a reduced rate given his current form, would also provide funds for squad reinforcement elsewhere. From a pure financial optimization perspective, selling Rashford if he's not central to Amorim's plans makes sense, particularly if his commercial value is declining along with his on-field performances. However, there are powerful counterarguments. Rashford remains a player of genuine quality who has previously performed at world-class levels for United. His struggles might be temporary, the result of tactical uncertainty during managerial transitions or psychological factors that new coaching might address. Selling him only to watch him rediscover his best form at Barcelona would be a public relations disaster and a genuine loss of elite talent. The symbolic dimension cannot be ignored either. Rashford represents Manchester United's connection to Manchester, the idea that local boys can still make it at one of the world's biggest clubs. His community work and charitable efforts have made him a figure of genuine importance beyond football. Facilitating his departure to Barcelona sends a message about United's current status, that they've become a selling club unable to retain their best homegrown talents when European giants come calling. The Barcelona fit question. Whether Rashford would actually thrive at Barcelona deserves careful analysis. The Catalan club's style of play, emphasizing possession, positional discipline, and technical security, differs significantly from a more direct, transition-focused football that has characterized Rashford's best performances for United. His greatest strengths, pace, directness, ability to run in behind defenses, might be less valued in Barcelona's system than the technical and tactical qualities that their approach prioritizes. Barcelona's expectations would also differ from what Rashford has experienced at United. While he's faced criticism at Old Trafford, he's also received sustained support as a homegrown player. At Barcelona, without that academy connection and arriving at a moment when the club is trying to re-establish itself among Europe's elite, he'd face immediate pressure to justify the investment. The patience shown to homegrown talents often isn't extended to expensive imports, particularly at clubs with Barcelona's demanding culture. The linguistic and cultural adjustment also matters. While many modern footballers navigate international moves successfully, adapting to life in a new country with a different language, while simultaneously trying to perform at the highest level creates challenges that shouldn't be minimized. Some players thrive on such challenges, finding the new environment stimulating. Others struggle with the accumulated stress of so many simultaneous adjustments. Alternative scenarios and outcomes. Several potential outcomes exist beyond the simple binary of Rashford, leaving or staying. He could reject Barcelona's approach, recommit to Manchester United, and rediscover his best form under Amorim's guidance. This would represent the ideal scenario for United supporters. Their prodigal son rejects external temptation and repays renewed faith with performances that remind everyone of his quality. Alternatively, Rashford could agitate for the move, creating a situation where United must decide whether retaining an unhappy player serves any purpose. History suggests that once a player's head is turned toward a new challenge, their performances at their current club often decline as motivation and commitment waver. Managing such situations requires delicate handling to avoid toxicity spreading through the squad. There's also the possibility that Barcelona's interest proves less concrete than reported, that the member vote doesn't translate to actual transfer activity, or that financial constraints make the deal impossible regardless of institutional will. Transfer speculation often proves far more dramatic than eventual reality, with many reported interests never materializing into genuine negotiations. The broader implications for United's project. Regardless of the specific outcome, the Rashford-Barcelona situation illuminates broader questions about Manchester United's current status in football's hierarchy. The fact that Barcelona feels confident pursuing one of United's homegrown stars, and that Rashford might seriously consider the move, suggests both clubs are in transitional moments where their relative standings are genuinely uncertain. For United, preventing such departures in the future requires delivering success on the pitch that makes staying more attractive than any external opportunity. If Rashford does leave and United responds by winning trophies with a team built around different attacking talents, it might ultimately prove a necessary step in the club's evolution. If he leaves and United continues struggling while he thrives at Barcelona, it will stand as a damning indictment of the club's current direction. The decision will also affect how other young talents view Manchester United as a development destination. If the message becomes that even homegrown players who make it to the first team will eventually be pushed out or tempted away, it might damage the club's ability to recruit the next generation of academy prospects. Conversely, if Rashford stays and rediscovers his form, it reinforces the narrative that United remains a place where loyalty is rewarded and local heroes can build complete careers. The interconnected narratives: youth, performance, and identity. Understanding the common threads. While Aiden Heaven's international decision, the Wonder Kid debut debate, and Marcus Rashford's Barcelona situation might initially appear as separate stories, they share deeper thematic connections. All three involve questions about Manchester United's identity, the role of youth development in the club's future, and how performance standards should be enforced while maintaining cultural values that have historically defined the institution. Heaven's international choice, while personal to him, reflects on United's ability to develop young talents who attract international attention. A player choosing to represent a nation that offers clearer pathways to playing time might be implicitly commenting on how difficult breaking into Manchester United's first team has become. If the club's academy produces talents who can succeed internationally but struggle to earn opportunities at Old Trafford, it suggests something has gone wrong with the integration pathway between academy and first team. The Wonder Kid debate directly addresses this integration challenge. If talented young strikers are ready for opportunities but aren't receiving them, it suggests that meritocracy has broken down, that expensive signings are protected from competition regardless of performance. This would represent a departure from United's historical values and might explain why young players increasingly look externally for development opportunities rather than trusting the Old Trafford pathway. Rashford's situation represents the potential endpoint of this broken system. A homegrown player who successfully navigated the academy pathway and became a star, but who now feels that his development has stagnated or that his ambitions are better served elsewhere. If United loses Rashford after investing years in his development, it validates concerns that the club has lost the ability to retain its best homegrown talents once they reach their peak. What this means for Amorim's project. Ruben Amorim inherited these challenges and must now address them while simultaneously trying to improve results and implement his tactical vision. His decisions regarding youth opportunities, performance standards, and player retention will define not just whether United succeeds in the short term, but what kind of club they become over the longer arc. The optimal approach likely involves renewed commitment to meritocracy, genuinely rewarding the best performers regardless of age, price tag, or reputation, while also providing appropriate support and development pathways for young talents, so they don't feel their only option is leaving. This balance is easier to describe than achieve, requiring sophisticated player management, clear communication, and willingness to make difficult decisions. Amorim must also consider how these various situations affect each other. If he fast-tracks a wonder kid into the team and they struggle, it might damage the confidence of other young players watching that experiment fail. If he facilitates Rashford's departure without securing adequate replacement, it creates pressure on remaining attackers while potentially sending a message that United has accepted their status as a development club for wealthier institutions. The role of supporter expectations. Manchester United's global fan base brings its own pressures to these situations. Supporters often have romantic attachments to youth development and homegrown players that don't always align with hard-headed assessment of quality and fit. The emotional investment in seeing academy graduates succeed can cloud judgment about whether they genuinely merit opportunities or whether sentiment is overriding meritocracy. Balancing these emotional dimensions with performance requirements represents one of football management's perpetual challenges. Supporters want to see youth given chances, but they also demand winning performances and trophy success. When these desires conflict, when young players aren't quite ready, or when retaining a struggling homegrown star prevents optimal team selection, managers face criticism regardless of their choices. Amorim's communication with supporters matters as much as his actual decisions. If he can articulate clear principles about when youth will be trusted, what performance standards all players must meet, and how decisions about players like Rashford align with broader vision, he can bring supporters along with decisions that might otherwise prove controversial. Defining moments in Manchester United's evolution. As we reach the conclusion of this analysis, the interconnected nature of these three narratives becomes even clearer. Aid in Heaven deciding his international future, debates about whether wonder kids deserve opportunities over struggling signings, and Marcus Rashford potentially leaving for Barcelona all represent inflection points in Manchester United's ongoing evolution. The decisions made in response to these situations will reveal what kind of club United is becoming under new leadership, and whether they can rediscover the values and methods that once made them English football's preeminent institution. The youth development question cuts to the heart of Manchester United's identity. For decades, the club has distinguished itself through its commitment to developing and trusting young players, creating a pathway from academy to first team that became the envy of football. If that pathway is breaking down, if talented youngsters like Heaven are looking externally for opportunities while wonder kids can't break through even when expensive signings underperform, it represents a profound loss of what has traditionally made United special. Ruben Amorim's role in addressing these challenges cannot be overstated. He arrived at a club that had lost its way, that seemed unsure of its identity and approach, that was making expensive mistakes in recruitment while failing to capitalize on its youth development capabilities. His decisions about youth opportunities, performance standards, and player retention will either restore clarity and direction or perpetuate the confusion that has characterized United's post-Ferguson era. The Marcus Rashford situation, in particular, represents a potential watershed moment. If Manchester United's greatest homegrown talent of this generation leaves for Barcelona, it will be analyzed for years as either a necessary step in the club's evolution or a catastrophic failure to retain their best assets. The outcome depends not just on whether Rashford stays or goes, but on what happens afterward. Does United improve without him, or does his departure leave a void that proves impossible to fill? For Heaven, the wonder kid waiting for opportunities, and Rashford, the established star weighing his options, these decisions will shape careers and potentially legacies. For Manchester United, they represent tests of institutional identity and competence. Can the club provide the development pathways, tactical fit, and competitive ambition that keeps talented players from academy prospects through established stars committed to the Old Trafford project? The answers will emerge not in dramatic moments, but through accumulated decisions across weeks and months. Will Heaven feel his international choice aligns with his United career trajectory or puts him at odds with it? Will the wonder kid earn their chance and seize it? Or will they become another talent that slipped away? Will Rashford stay and rediscover his best form? Or will Barcelona's camp new host the next chapter of his career? What we can say with certainty is that Manchester United stand at a crossroads where the past, present, and future intersect uncomfortably. The club's glorious history creates expectations that current realities struggle to meet. The decisions facing Amorim regarding youth development, team selection, and player retention will determine whether United can bridge that gap between their storied past and their desired future, or whether the distance will continue growing until what once made them special exists only in memory. The Theatre of Dreams has witnessed countless defining moments across its history, instances where decisions made or opportunities seized changed the club's trajectory. As Aid in Heaven considers his international future, as wonder kids train hoping for their chance, and as Marcus Rashford weighs whether his future lies in Manchester or Barcelona, United finds itself in another such moment. How the club responds will be remembered and analyzed for years to come.